Welcome to a couple of bunkies. I had gotten this awesome Ryobi 4-cycle weed whacker from my uncle. He knew that I had a lot of experience working on engines, and he thought I might be able to get this one working. Just from a quick once-over, I see one problem that I'm going to have to target first. After the first few attempts of starting it, I could see two issues. One, the primer valve has a small slit in it and it's leaking fuel. It is also cranking very hard. I was able to find this aftermarket carburetor that was fairly inexpensive, and it included all of the things that I thought I would need for this project. I start off by removing the air filter and adding the new air filter that comes with the kit. And just to make it easier, I want to remove the carburetor as well. The carburetor is held in place with two studs and two nuts. When you remove the two nuts, then the carburetor can slip right off. You will also have to take off the fuel hose going to the carburetor. With this new kit, I was able to get some new fuel filters and new fuel lines. I take a look at the old carburetor and I see something slightly odd. Now this is where I realized I ended up grabbing the wrong carburetor. The one that I currently have does not have this little protrusion. But after looking at the old carburetor, it is completely pristine and I feel I can use it. I've had a few engines that I've ended up buying off a marketplace getting all gummed up because of the bad alcohol inside of the fuel. It's almost better to buy the stuff at the can at the hardware store in order to run these small engines. I empty the gas tank into a fuel container. I remove the old fuel filter from inside of the tank. Now I can remove this gas tank. It's held in with 3 bolts. By removing the gas tank, it makes it much easier to replace the fuel lines. I yank out the other fuel hoses. I might as well use what I can out of this kit. I then clean up the gas tank with an old rag. This kit was obviously made for an entirely different engine, and I didn't need this little rubber piece. The gas tank has small holes in it that I can just push the fuel lines in. I insert the new hoses into the gas tank, leaving enough room where I can fish out the other end of the hose within the tank and attach the new filter, and pull the hose and filter back into the tank. And now I reattach the gas tank. The fuel bulb is at the end of the carburetor. The bulb is held in with 2 screws. After replacing the fuel bulb, I went ahead and reattached the fuel hoses to the carburetor. There's a fuel supply and a fuel return. If you hook them up backwards, it will not work. Now that the hoses are attached to the carburetor, I can attach the throttle cable and attach the 2 nuts on the studs with a ratcheting wrench. Now I can reattach the air filter. Now to add the filter and the filter housing, and it kind of just snaps into place. Now I add gas to the tank. I can reattach the cap. Now I can prime the engine, set the carburetor to full choke, attempt to pull start it 4 times. Now, as I had stated before, the engine cranks, but it cranks real hard. So I'm going to have to go about checking the valve timing of this little 4-cylinder. In order to do this, I need to take all the plastic guards off of this engine. While I'm at this, I might as well remove the old spark plug. The old spark plug was quite burnt, but it had plenty of material on it. I just need to clean it up. First, I open up the gap with the screwdriver and then use a small file in order to bring the electrode down to bare metal. You can also do this with sandpaper. or emery cloth. Now I press the side electrode on the workbench. I'm just going to guess the gap that I'm going to need for the spark plug, but you can find it in the manual. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach the spark plug, holding the side electrode to the engine and pulling until I can see a good set of sparks. This will not only tell me if the spark plug is good, but it will also tell me that the coil is good. And now I can reattach the spark plug and attach the spark plug wire. At around the same time that I removed the cover on this old Ryobi, I discovered I had a really large crack in this heat dam, and I was able to find a replacement on Amazon. The heat dam sits right on top of this air baffle. The two studs attach to the back of the heat dam, and the heat dam is attached to the engine block with two bolts. And the carburetor and air filter attached just how I had showed you before in the earlier video. Now I'm going to give it a couple pulls to see how it feels. Feels like it's almost too much compression. The way that I understood that the timing was off on this weed whacker is I would pull and I would pull and it would start building up pressure to the point where I was not able to pull the cord anymore. To check timing, I have to remove the crankcase cover. So I remove the bolt on the crankcase cover. These two little seesaws on top are called the rocker arms. Now we need to remove the spark plug before finding top dead center so we don't end up building pressure inside of the cylinder. After getting the spark plug off, I find top dead center by pulling the cord and observing when the little mark on the camshaft gear is in the 6 o'clock position. If you feel there might be a possibility that the chain had slipped, these are the two timing marks to make sure they line up. When you get to top dead center, you should also be able to peer and see the top of the cylinder head. Now that I have verified it being in the top dead center location, I can go ahead and verify the spacing. Feeler gauges are a fairly common tool that you can pretty much find at any automotive store. For this engine, the gap should be between 0.006 and 0.008 standard measurement. And sadly, my feeler gauge only goes down to 0.008. On these rocker arms, there's a retaining nut and a adjustment nut. In order to adjust this, attach the wrench on the adjustment nut and then loosen the retaining nut. Tighten or loosen the adjustment nut to the desired clearance using a feeler gauge, like in this diagram right here. Use the feeler gauge over top of the camshaft. So I go about loosening the retaining nuts. Use the feeler gauge and tighten the adjustment nut. Make sure still to have a little bit of wiggle room. And tighten the retaining nut. And we repeat the same process on the intake side. and tighten the retaining nut on the intake valve. Now reinstall the spark plug and reinstall the valve cover. And after we get up to this point, we can find out whether it works or not.
Oh God.
Now I can reinstall the air filter and install all of the plastic covers. Now I can prime the engine, set the carburetor to full choke, attempt to pull start it 4 times. And then the engine starts right up with no issue. But as soon as any gas is given to it, it stalls. I take it must have gotten flooded. Right now it seems like the mixture is too rich. And the tighter that we tighten this one screw, the more lean the engine will run. The engine can stall both from being too rich or too lean. And that's about it with these simple little engines. Please like and subscribe if you're interested in watching more content.